God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
All right. So I'm getting a lot of emails and texts, messages from people who are asking me to look into Proctor and Buchanan. And I just wanted to also kind of shift the focus a little bit, because when Yuri Buchanan had his 3 days on the stand, I really analyzed him. I've been working on that video for a while, but it's long and lengthy, and I kind of figured people didn't want to see it because of that. But apparently that may not be true. What I discovered in analyzing every word and watching him very carefully, and I mean very carefully, what I noticed is Buchanan was so defensive and unable to throw Proctor under the bus because he loved him.
Let me just ask you this. Do you believe that Michael Proctor, his involvement in this case, taints the investigation? Tainted the investigation?
No.
Not at all.
The investigation was done with honor, integrity, and all the evidence pointed in one direction only.
Honor and integrity by Michael Proctor?
Was that a question? I'm sorry.
Sure is. Everything I say is a question. Honor and integrity by Michael Proctor, Sergeant? Okay.
Sustain to the comment. Go ahead and ask it again, Mr.
I'll ask it again. You said honor and integrity. Honor and integrity by Michael Proctor? Objection.
I'll allow it.
The investigation was conducted with honor and integrity, and all the evidence pointed in one direction and one direction only.
So, Sergeant Buchanan, you don't want to answer my question, correct?
I will answer your question, absolutely.
Do you think this case was handled with honor and integrity by Michael Proctor, Sergeant?
The investigation was handled with integrity by Michael Proctor.
He really loved him. And he knows better than all of us that the problem wasn't Proctor. And as much as he wants to see Karen Reed pay, as much because of the fact that she is the catalyst for all of this damage to his personal life and professional life, he's even more angry at the district attorney's office because they threw Proctor under the bus. And this is a man who lives his entire life by a certain code, right? And most of these guys, they're military guys, right? And so when you think about what the military is and what the police force is, these are men protecting men. They are all about sort of ego and integrity. And any time that Jackson tried to indict his integrity or challenge him on the integrity of the investigation, Buchanan got so emotional that he was no longer able to kind of put up that front. He was no longer able to keep that protection, that like protective shell around himself of composure and control. That was really important to him. I mean, control is an important piece of his personality, right? Like he wants you to see what he wants you to see, and he wants to keep close to the vest anything he doesn't want you to see. And what came out and what came through loud and clear is he loves Michael Proctor personally and professionally. This was his partner. He very much thinks that he was thrown under the bus, that it was completely unfair. And I would agree. The thing about Proctor, and I've investigated these people closely, this is not a guy who had enough authority to do anything by himself. He never would have planted evidence without believing 100% that it would have been sanctioned. And if you go back and you look very carefully at the texts that we get from Proctor, the one text on the group thread with all the cops, and then the text with his high school buddies, he tells us everything we need to know about this group of cops, this group of Massachusetts State Police who came out of the district attorney's office. He tells us everything we need to know. He tells us right off the bat that this was a very emotional situation for them, that they saw John O'Keefe as one of them, and they felt that Karen Reed was guilty. He tells us that everybody, the higher ups, all the powers that be, want answers, and they want her to pay. He also tells us right away that he's worried about not having enough evidence to convict her. So we know that these are the things on his mind by the end of the first day. Now, everybody's focused on collusion between the Alberts and the cops. But the thing you have to keep in mind here is Proctor never questioned anything that anyone in the house told him, because these are family friends, right? As far as I remember, Julie Albert babysat for Courtney. And at one point, Michael Proctor needed a babysitter, and Julie, I believe, was going to watch his kid. Why wouldn't he have Julie come and watch his kid? His sister, who is like his best friend in the world, his confidant, that's who watches her kids. So he never questioned anything Jen McCabe said, never, ever questioned anything Brian Albert said. And Brian Higgins was one of the Canton local cops. Like, these guys knew him. Some of them had worked with him on cases in the past. And there's another really important person in this mix. While some of the MSP cops were not close to Canton cops, they were close to Chief Berkowitz. And how do we know that? Because at one point in Proctor's text, he calls somebody, and I can't remember if it was Karen Reed or the ME, at one point calls both of them nutbags. I have to go back and look carefully. He's calling somebody a nutbag, and then he says, like Chief would say. And it's 100% for sure that he's talking about the chief of police at the time, because there is no chief in the Norfolk County DA's office group of investigators. The chief that he's talking about is Berkowitz. So now we know Berkowitz, Tully, Buchanan, Proctor, DeChico, Fanning, these guys are close. They're close. They're brothers. And there is no world where Michael Proctor, who's the lowest man on this totem pole, has the authority to plant evidence without everybody okaying it and knowing it. And Buchanan will not, cannot, and is not going to throw Michael Proctor under the bus. He's never going to tell you that this investigation lacked integrity. Never. And the reason he's never going to do that is because he doesn't believe that. And he's pissed off that Proctor's being treated the way that he is. So more than he's mad at Karen Reed for being the catalyst for all of this, for blowing this all up, he's mad at the DA and the DA's office for the way that they treated Proctor, the way they made him the fall guy. And he was never going to do anything to throw his friend under the bus. Again, that is where his loyalty lies. It lies to the men who he sees as protecting his butt, as out there on the front lines with him, not the guys in the offices who are telling them what to do. And the problem with this group of cops, this had probably been going on for a long time, okay? See, the corruption here, these people, including the judge, who I now am 100% convinced, and I've been trending in this direction for a long time. I hear the other attorneys out there. Nobody wants to say that they think she is 100% crooked. Nobody wants to say that. They have a really hard time believing that a judge could be corrupt like this. So they want to believe that she thinks she's being fair, but that she has a, bias towards the prosecutor's office. Well, I'm here to tell you, as a psychologist who's been investigating this case for the last year, that is not true. This group of people, including the judge, they believe that Karen Reed did this. Okay? They believe that they are the burden holders of justice. And that is why the judge is nodding, gesturing, and is giving all of the favoritism to the prosecutor, to Hank. That's why she's making signals at him.
And whether it refreshes your recollection on any comments Mr. Whiffen made about Pakistan.
Objection.
That's why they have these insider looks. And it's so unbelievable that they just don't even care that they're being absolutely scrutinized as closely as they are. They don't care because for them, they believe that they are the ones who are on the side of justice and that we're like the crazy fanatics that are in the wrong. And because they believe that, despite all of the evidence to the contrary, they think they're entitled to behave like this. And that's the thing. Everyone is asking me, are these people just all sociopaths? And the answer to that is no. But this is an example of what happens when you really become gripped with confirmation bias. This is what happens when people get emotional. And I've been saying this, you hear me say it all the time. We think that emotion and logic are separate. And I know how hard it is for you to believe that that's not true. I get it. But I promise you, as a psychologist whose primary focus is physiology, is how the brain works, that is what I focus on, right? You know, I like Freud and all those guys, but that's not what I do. What I do is I look at how the brain is organized functionally, and then how that affects behavior and thought, and how that then impacts our lives day to day. What I can tell you 100% is these people were emotional. They were completely biased because they believe these people in the house. These are people whose families they've known for generations. They have no reason to question the authority of Brian Albert, and they won't. They're not going to. So they believe Jen McCabe. They can't imagine a world where Brian Albert would put John O'Keefe out on the front lawn on purpose. They just can't imagine that. So they're never going to believe that. And because of that, they just don't care what other evidence contradicts their belief, and they're ignoring it. They went out and got Hank Brennan because they thought, you know, this is a defense attorney. He's separate from the office, which makes them look better somehow. Like it's not really coming from them, right? Like it's an outsider coming in. So you can't say that it's corrupt, which is, of course, the most ridiculous thing in the whole world because he is just so blatantly corrupt. And the thing about Lally, and I'll tell you, everybody thinks like he's too like meek and small and like could never do anything outright corrupt. But I'm here to tell you that that man is like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Not that he's any kind of instigator. Like he's another one like Proctor. He's never going to do anything that's not sanctioned by somebody higher than him. He's not going to self-initiate, you know, okaying evidence planting. Obviously, Adam Lally's going to do whatever anybody else in that office tells him to do. And because he's so unassuming, all of us think, oh, no way. I'm telling you that is not true. Okay. And I am glad that Adam Lally is not running the show here because he is so unassuming that even the jurors have a hard time believing that he would put in front of them something corrupt. And I know that they want to say, and that it's hard for us to believe that some of these stories about these crazy women that are connected to Turtle Boy could possibly be telling the truth. But I'm starting to wonder whether or not that's true, because think about it. They're so blatantly corrupt. Think about the way the judge is just so openly signaling Brennan. And yesterday's whole stunt with Shannon was not the first time that we've seen it. I mean, it happened with Dan Wolf in that absurd arc of voir dire.
I never discussed this with him. This is something that I sent to him, that I did on my own, and that I sent to him. But he never asked this of me, and we never discussed it.
So you sent him what you thought would be the best questions and answers for him to ask you when you testified?
So this is something I routinely do when I work with attorneys, okay? I prepare this on my own to prep myself and prepare for trial.
Right? She did exactly the same thing. She's signaling Brennan. And I think what happened there is Brennan really thought that there was corruption. He thought that he was like uncovering, collusion between the defense and ARCA, but it wasn't there. And so he wound up signaling her by the end of this voir dire, there's nothing here. So he thought, and he had communicated to the judge that this was going to be it. He was going to reveal corruption. And they have to discredit ARCA because I'm telling you, this judge has been a part of this prosecution team, has been a prosecutor her entire career. She was getting accolades and awards back in the early 80s for her work in the prosecutor's office. She is a career prosecutor. She believes that she sits over the side of justice, and they believe that Karen Read is guilty. That is what is happening here. And as much as you and I can see that that's absolutely absurd at this point, I mean, it's so absurd that it's like hysterical. Okay. It's absurd in a way that is beyond absurd. All of us can see that. But when you are blinded by confirmation bias, you are blind. Your brain, and when I tell you that your brain will literally block out. It won't. Have you ever lost your car keys or something small, like your sunglasses maybe, and you've been searching, you're searching everywhere? This happens to me with my laundry card. Now, in New York City, very few of us have washers and dryers in our apartments, but we usually have them in our buildings, right? So we have to use laundry cards. And I know a lot of it's turning digital, but not everybody's there yet. So that's something that I lose all the time. One day, I was absolutely frantic, and I'm always worried about losing the laundry card in between cycles because I'm afraid that I'm going to ruin clothes if I lose the card in between the wash and the dry, right? So my clothes would be all wet and moldy and whatever. So one day, I'm looking for my laundry card, and I'm convinced it's gone, and I'm panicking. What am I going to do? How am I going to get my clothes dry, right? So I sit down on the couch, and I kind of give up for a second. I'm like, all right, I guess it's just lost. I don't know what I don't know. I get distracted for a second. I look down, I look on the couch, and right next to me, sitting by itself on the couch in plain view, is this laundry card. Now, either there are truly little minions in my house hiding stuff, or what happened there is once my brain made the decision that the card was lost, it hid it from me. And that happens to us all the time because your belief system controls, overrides. It is the controller of your vision. It is not the other way around. Now, I know you've been told a different story for a long time, but I am here to tell you that science now knows that story is false. And we know from a brain science perspective, perception dominates vision and everything else. So when you believe that you're on the side of justice, that you're right, that Karen Read is guilty in this case, you are going to ignore all of the evidence to the contrary. And they want to get rid of ARCA because they know that ARCA appears to be completely credible. And so their brain had to find a way to make that not make sense. How could this be? How could these very credible scientists be telling us John O'Keefe couldn't get hit by a car? Doesn't make any sense. She did it. So their brain has to find a way to make them not credible. So I guarantee you, Hank Brennan believed they were colluding with the defense, believed that wholeheartedly. But of course, there's no evidence of that because he's blind. But I am sure that at this point, these people believe they are on the side of righteousness. They think they're right. And that is what is entitling their behavior. Not sadism. They're not sociopathic. They think that they are the bearers of justice. Scary stuff.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.